Hello everybody, welcome back to another Woodworking Wisdom. My name's Ben. Today we are looking at the T8. So Tormek machine. I love this machine. I've sharpened loads of stuff on it. What we're looking at today is mainly wood turning tools. Okay. We've got a few other jigs and a few other tools and knives and things that we can look at if we requested it. But today we are concentrating on turning. So for all you turners out there, we'll give you some nice little hints and tips, how we can use these jigs, how they work with the machine, and really get you some nice sharp tools to crack on with your turning. Okay. Now, sharpening is generally a bit of a chore. It's really the turning that we're all excited about, the kind of fun end of it. But for me, the way this machine is set up and the way we use it is actually a pleasure to use. It's nice and quiet. It's slow running, nice and safe. So I'm happy to approach this machine with any of the tools and get them really super sharp. Okay, we can get some really nice sharp edges on this. So, like I say, this is the T8. We looked at the T4 last week, and check that out if you missed that. We were looking more at kind of hand tools on that one. So we've kind of beefed up a little bit. We've come up to the T8, a bigger motor, a longer run time, and all around a bit more of a kind of beefy machine. It's got this cast zinc body. Everything on it is kind of machined at the same time. Okay, so these barrels you get here and here are machined with the actual the body of the machine, and that keeps everything super square, and we get these lovely right angles and things like that. Okay. Zinc obviously is resistant to the water, so we're not going to rust. But yeah, it's an all-round fantastic machine. We are going to look at wood turning jigs. So I think we'll start off pretty much, where you start off with your turning. We've got a roughing gouge here. Quite a big steel on this one. It'd be probably the biggest of all the wood turning tools. And it's got quite a big bevel on it. Okay, so when we're talking about the bevel, we're talking about the kind of this area here. All right, the area that leads up to the cutting edge. Okay, so quite a bit of steel on that if you think about how we're sharpening it. But where it's in contact with the wheel is actually just a very small section, a front to back on this bevel. So it's actually quite quick and easy to sharpen. All right. So first jig we're going to use, we're going to look at the multi-jig. Okay, this is going to do a few of our tools. We're going to spend a bit of time with this one today, and we have got the open shoe set up in the jig. Okay, that's where our chisel's going to sit. It also comes with this one. This is for our skew chisels and things like that. Okay, and some of the parting tools, things like that, are going to work with that closed shoe. So looking at the jig, you can see it's got a longer edge on one side. Okay, that's what's going to sit up against our bar, our universal support, I should call it. So we're going to put our gouge into the jig. Okay, you can see that sat down in that V, and this little thumb screw is what's kind of driving it down into the V there. Okay, that's going to keep it again nice and square in the jig. I'm just eyeballing it from above and just tighten that one up. What we're looking is for this U shape. If we come over to this other camera here, we're looking for that U shape to be right in the middle of the jig. Okay, so we're nice and balanced either way. Good. I'm just going to check that myself. We've not really considered how far this protrudes out here. We're going to use the marker method to sharpen this, or to find our angle. So let's get a marker pen, and I'm just going to color that bevel. Okay. So if we come up above here, Jason, on the screen there, thank you. Just going to use a bit of marker pen and just color that bevel all over. All right. Good. Put that to one side. Now I'm going to offer it up to the stone here, and you can see we've got quite a distance to go. I'm just going to loosen these 2 thumb screws off, and this, I think, because we've got such a distance to travel, you see this gap I've got to close here. I'm going to use a little trick. I'm going to use our honing wheel just to advance that micro adjuster along. Again, we'll look at this micro adjuster in a moment. Okay, so we've got our first question coming in.
We've got 2 questions then.
Lovely.
To start you off. So Ollie was asking, what are the advantages or disadvantages of a diamond wheel?
Okay. So diamond wheel, you've got 3 different grades of a diamond wheel. Obviously, this is a kind of soft porous stone, so this will wear. Okay. So you get that kind of longevity with a diamond stone. It's not going to dish. It's not going to have any little furrows in it, because when we sharpen our gouges, quite often we'll end up with a little kind of furrow in the middle here, a little valley in the stone. So you get none of that with the diamond stone. Also with the diamond stone, it's really good for like carvers and things like that. You can quite often use the side of the stone for sharpening. It has a really kind of wide flat on it. So where we're using the wheel here, and we're creating a kind of concave bevel on the flat of the stone of the diamond ones, you'll get a flat bevel. So it's good for people like carvers who don't want that kind of concave in the bevel. I can't really see any downsides to it. To the diamond stones, I like this stone because I can grade it from the kind of natural 220 that it is up to 1,000. So for me, this stone is a little bit more kind of universal. I can do my shaping and grinding on this stone, and then grade it up to that 1,000 grit and get that polished bevel. Okay. Again, we've got our hone here, which we can use. But for me, this is what I use. This is what I'm used to, and I'm kind of sticking with it. If I'm honest, I like it, and for me, it's a kind of if it isn't broke, don't fix it type of thing. Okay, so another question.
We've answered the second one, I think. But Cliff was asking, can you please show when would you use the grindstone at 1,000 grit, having used the stone grader, and when would you swap back to 220? And then Chris asked a similar question. What is the equivalent grit of the diamond wheel to the one that you're using?
Well, I would say the 220 would probably be the coarse one. So it goes coarse, fine, and I think there's like an extra fine. I would say that's the coarse, as it is 220. The medium one would probably be your 1,000, and then they go up. To really, for me, for what I do, it's probably too fine. Okay, it's gilding the lily for me. I can get this super sharp just on the 220. But for those kind of cabinet makers, for those looking for that, super finesse, super sharp, that's when you go right up through the grades. But like I say, this is the stone I use the most. And it's very versatile. We're going to show you how we're going to grade the stone and that in a moment. Not on the rough and gouge. Again, it's probably a bit overkill to go up to that 1,000 grit. This is a kind of, this is a stock removal tool. So that 220 is, I'll come straight off this wheel, and sometimes I'll just hone the edge because it only takes a second. But generally, I come straight off of this wheel. even if we have a burr, as soon as we get wood turning, it's going to knock that burr off. So not so much of a finesse tool. It's stock removal, so you can kind of get away with something slightly rougher. When we get to the bowl gouge, I'm going to grade this stone up, because that's one where that bevel really wants to kind of make a nice contact and be super smooth and give us that really sharp edge. So that bowl gouge, I'm going to attempt to grind it, sharpen it. We'll take it up to 1,000 grit, and then we'll come over to the hone, which kind of, takes it right up into the kind of 4.5, 5,000 grit. Okay. So machine guns on. This is going through a water trough. Okay, and what that does, it picks up some of the water, it kind of carries across the stone, and it flushes away any of the material, the actual particles of stone coming off of the wheel here, but also the metal filings. Okay, they get swept over the top of the wheel, and they just sit in the trough here. Okay, we've got a trough on the side of the machine, and that's got, on this model, on the T8, it's got a little magnet just here. Okay, so it's like a rare earth magnet that pulls all of the muck out of the water, and it sticks to the magnet. It's on the outside of the trough, which is genius, because it doesn't get dirty. It doesn't get all that stuff on it. And it's also a little scraper, so you can scrape out the bottom. All right, these guys really have thought this machine through. Let's get a bit closer to that wheel here. So a quick whiz with that micro adjuster, and I'm just bringing the bevel up until we can see it contact with the wheel. Okay, and I'm going to come this side. And what I'm trying to do is just close that gap of light. It needs to come out a touch. So I'm going to use that micro adjuster for that fine control. And just bringing that back until we can see that the gap of light between the bevel of the chisel, or gouge I should say, and the wheel has closed. Just double check that. Now what I'm going to do, like I say, this is the marker method, so we are reproducing a pre-existing angle. So the angle of that bevel that's already on there, we're going to just take it back to that. Okay, we're not reshaping. If you did want to reshape it, there is a recipe for that. So our protrusion would be critical. The way it's spaced from the wheel would be critical. So there's a little bit more setup in the if you're taking it back to those kind of factory sizes. If you can see on that, so this is a black marker pen, and you just see this scratch down the middle. That stone is making contact right from the heel to the cutting edge there. So we know that angle now is bang on. We're going to grind right the way from the heel to the cutting edge. Now that's all set. I'm just double making sure that those thumb screws are up nice and tight. We don't want this universal support moving once we get going. Turn the machine on and just make sure it's picking up that water. This porous stone, it is drinking the water in. You just want to see a bit of water on the surface here. Okay. If you don't see that, you probably need to top that up. So jig goes right up against that universal support. Okay, so if we can come overhead here, or just to the side, that's lovely. You can see how this is going to roll side to side. And I've got 2 fingers on the steel, quite up nice and close to the grind, and I'm just going for one of these wings. That's going to give me a nice kind of pivot on here. We're rolling on the belly of this gouge, so we've got this rounded gouge, and that's rolling on the bar. Really important that the gouge is in contact with this universal support, and also that the jig is as well. That flat face rolling on that bar. Okay, so let's get to it. And this is in that kind of 220 grit stage. So you can, I'm not sure if the microphone's picking it up, but you can just hear the grind doing its thing. And this is nice and controlled, nice and simple. Now let's have a look at that. Let's see what we're missing. Okay, so you can see the color of the gouge has come back. That exposed all that nice fresh steel. We're just missing a little bit here, but I would leave that on. Okay, I would leave that on. And we'll get it in the next grind. We don't want to keep grinding away material. All you're going to do is shorten the life of your tool. So that little bit there, that's probably from a previous hand grind where the bevel's just a slightly different shape in that area. But we've got that main bevel right the way across. Okay, really quick, really easy. I'm going to do a little bit more on that just to make sure we've got right up to that cutting edge, and we're rolling it right up on that wing. Don't forget to spend just as much time on the wings as you would down in that center. Okay, that's quite important because very slowly this cutting edge will start to creep back and those wings will start to kind of protrude if you take too much material out of the middle. Okay, so really important that we roll right up onto that edge. Okay, good. So that's not a bad grind on that. That's lovely, lovely little grind. And what I'm going to do now is just use the polishing wheel there, the leather hone, to just polish the kind of cutting edge, if you will. This I'm going to do freehand. I'm going to use a little bit of the paste. Okay. So we've got another question.
From Derek, how do you keep the leather honing moist? Only real moist.
Hi, Derek. So what we've got here, these can dry out if they're getting a bit, if they're not used for a while, you sometimes get a little bit of powder off that. And this is a leather, okay? It comes with the oil, so make sure you kind of pre-treat this before you start to put any of the honing paste on the leather. Okay, so it comes with a little bit, and this is the kind of oil you put on your kind of oil stones and things like that. All right, so when you first get this will be nice and brown and fresh, like this profiled hone on the edge here. Okay, so you'll have that lovely kind of fresh leather color. You can see this has gone black. All right, you need to prime it with the oil that it comes with. And that is quite an important stage. That's offering a bit of resistance for this honing compound, so it kind of sits on the surface a little bit better. This will take material in, and my suggestion would be, if you want to keep it fresh, just every now and then just put a little bit of the honing paste on there. It's kind of a thick liquid, or like a paste, and that's going to kind of just keep it rejuvenated. All right, so don't leave it too long between sharpening or reapplication of your honing compound. Okay, talking of honing compound, I'm going to put a little bit on here. All right, and like I said before, I kind of liken it to putting toothpaste on your toothbrush, about that amount. And I'm going to do a little side swipe as I push it. Hopefully we'll get a nice bit of coverage on the wheel. All right, so just a little bit. We're not slathering it on. We're just putting a little bit of that cutting compound on, and that is a very mild abrasive. Okay, so that is still cutting steel. All right, so just by hand, you could swap this over. You could bring our support over to here and polish the whole of that bevel if you're, if you want. Look really nice. If you see all your tools with lovely polished bevels, they look beautiful. I'm not sure how much more they would, how much better they would perform, but I'm just going to freehand this because I really just want that cutting edge. All right. I'm being careful not to bring it up too far and destroy that nice sharp, edge we've created. Just down nice and low, get that bevel kind of rubbing, and then I'm just going to swing it side to side. Using one hand to kind of control where it is, and the other to bring that rotation in. Just be a bit careful of those wings as you're riding up on the edge there. We don't want to score that leather too much, although you can't do it too, you're not going to do it too much damage by scoring that. Okay. I'll give that a little wipe off, and if we can come over to this other camera, hopefully we can see, where are we here? So I'll just get that focused. You see that slight polish to the cutting edge. All right, that's really kind of honed it, and it is really just on that cutting edge. Good. So we've got a super sharp roughing gouge there. If you wanted to, you could, again, like I say, just knock off any burr you might have, just using that profiled leather hone. That's going to polish the inside of the flute. Okay, this is your flute, and I would actually do that stage before I did this one. Okay, but like I say, I don't usually hone a roughing gouge. Good. So that's the multi-jig with the open shoe in it. What have we got next? Let's keep that nice and tidy. I think we'll use, we'll go with the bowl gouge jig. Now, I did show this one on the T4, but it's this is going to be a really important one for you turners, because it's a really complex angle we've got to go with. Okay. So we've got another question.
So this one is from Derek. Where can he get the oil for the honing wheel from?
So that's a Tormek product. I think we would sell it as a separate. Worth just checking on our website. I have used, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to, I have used the Norton honing oil on this, the kind of one that you'd put on an oil stone. But yeah, it should be a spare part, or it generally comes with the machine. Okay.
There's a suggestion here from David. He says light machine oil used for sewing machines is ideal. So yeah, that's sort of
great.
We do sell the leather honing oil as well.
Sure. Yeah, great little tips that, and that's what we love about these live sessions, is that we're learning at the same time. We strive to be as best as we can, but in this massive world of woodwork, I certainly learn new things every day from the guys, from questions coming in. So we really encourage that. That's great stuff. So machine oil for a sewing machine. Top tip. Sorry, I'm just doing this here. I haven't really showed you what I'm doing, am I? So we've got bowl gouge. Okay, this is our bowl gouge jig, or Tormek's bowl gouge jig. First thing we're going to do is look at our little recipe on the tool setter here. Let me just pop that to one side. And I think if we come back to this side camera here, on this turning tool setter, we go with this recipe number 4. Okay, so that's the number of the recipe, and we've got some numbers here, and you'll see the letters at the top and what they kind of pertain to, and we'll explain these as we go. We're going for that 55-degree angle. And we'll go step by step through this recipe, and we've done that before on that particular bowl gouge. Okay, so it's already set at that recipe, and what that means is when we're grinding, we're following the exact same profile as we did before, which is going to save time. It's going to save steel, so you're not actually grinding off as much as you would if you were kind of reshaping it and things like that. And it's going to get you back to turning that a little bit quicker. Okay, I've seen the guys, sharpen their bowl gouge 2 or 3 times during a big bowl. So the less time we spend at sharpening, the more time we've got to turn. Okay, so another question.
Yeah, just a couple just before you.
Yeah, absolutely, because I can get into it in a minute.
How do you address the bump at the seam on the honing leather?
Okay, so a good one. I saw this. I'm going to pinch this. I saw a little clip of Nick Agar doing a demonstration the other day, and he actually took a little sanding block and just dressed that. He took that back and forth, and that just laid down that little bump. Okay, because what we've got here is a piece of leather, and there's a join mark across here, a little diagonal join mark. And this leather is got so much give and kind of it will compress and expand. So just dress that in with a little bit of abrasive, a little abrasive block. I saw one of the guys do. Okay.
One from Cliff. Are you restricted to 200 mil grindstones on the T4?
They are, yeah. So this T8 is a good question. That the T4 has a 200 mil grindstone. On this one, it's 250. Okay. So it's a bigger stone. It's also a wider stone. All right. This stone would not fit in your T4, unfortunately. So again, having that bigger stone gives you that wider area to work on. So if you're doing your bowl gouges, you'll see in a moment how far we have to travel with that one. Having that wider stone is really beneficial for you turners. Okay. Again, with things like plane irons, you've got that bit more material. But that's not to knock the T4. That is a smashing little machine, and it's going to do everything that this one does. I guess the reason to step up to a T8 would be if you're using it a lot, if you're spending a lot of time sharpening. The motor on this one is continuously rated, so it's you can have this running pretty much all day. Whereas the T4, you want to give it a little bit of a break. It's not built to run all day. Okay. It's to come over, get your stuff sharp, and then crack on. Whereas this could sit in a shared workshop. Colin could come and sharpen. I could be on here next, and then Jason with his tools. You can run it for ages, and it's just gonna stand up to a bit more use. All right. But yeah, longer lasting stone, obviously, with that bigger diameter, but it has got that extra width as well. But the T4 is a great little machine. So what we're doing, we're sharpening bowl gouges. So I've got my turning tool setter. Like I say, we're going to go through that recipe. So recipe number 4, our angle is 55 degrees. Okay, so what we're talking about there is that angle across here. All right, that's your 55 degrees. The first part of the recipe is the jig setting. So let me find my jig here, and I'll come back over onto this camera. That's lovely. And you can see on the jig, let me pop that down so I don't do any harm. You can see some little numbers on the side of the jig here. It's got 6, 4, 2, 1, 0, sorry. On the side here, we've got a little thumb screw, and just loosen that one off. And it's kind of like a little ratchet system. It's got a positive kind of click when you hit one of those positions. Okay, jig setting 4. So we're lining that arrow there to the 4 on that knuckle of the jig. And then we're going to tighten up that thumb screw again. Okay, and that's locked in position, nice and solid. Couldn't move that if I wanted to. All right. So what's next on our recipe? Let's go back to our turning tool setter. So we're jig setting 4, protrusion 65. Okay, and protrusion is how far this gouge is going to stick out the front of our jig. Okay, so we're looking at that distance there from the edge of the jig to the cutting edge. All right, and that needs to be on our TTS 100 here is 65. On the back, we've got 65 clearly marked up there. And what we can do is just use this turning tool setter. The jig goes up against the jig, and our cutting edge goes up against that little shoulder or step. Okay, we're going to tighten that up. Nice and tight. Just double checking. I haven't quite got that right, so let's get that right because it's important. 65 mil, and we've got no gap here. Okay, what else does it say on our recipe? We are here, so we've done our jig setting, done our protrusion. The last part of the recipe is hole A. You can see on the jig A and B. It really is that simple. We're going through hole A, and we're going to drop that down onto the wheel. You can see how far off that is at the moment. So I'm just going to undo my thumb screws and just bring that back. All right. Our TTS 100 has 2 little wheels on it, and they both need to be sat on the wheel here and here. So if we, that's it, stay on that one. And if I just rotate the wheel, you can see that the top one is turning. All right. What that means is this bar needs to just come in a touch, and so that this wheel has contact with our main grinding wheel. So this is where this micro adjuster comes in really handy. Okay, we can turn that a couple of turns. We've got a little gap there, and then we can push that bar in, and it's controlled. It's not going to slide all the way in. You've lost your reference point. It's nice and controlled. And now you can see both of those wheels turning. We've got a good contact with the wheel. Okay, with the grind wheel. So that's it. That's our recipe. Our recipe, which is going to give us that lovely kind of rounded, quite complex bevel shape. Okay, so it's taken all of that, all those years of practice of getting the perfect angle, and it's put it down in an easy to follow recipe, so we can just get straight in on it, because it can be quite daunting trying to sharpen something like that without any prior experience. So turn the machine on. We're going to use as much as the wheel as we can, and you can see if I'm stood right in front of the machine here, the long handle on this bowl gouge is going to just hit into my body. So I'm going to take a little side step, and we're going to drop down onto the wheel and just bring that across. I'm putting pressure with my front fingers, so on the steel here, and not levering the handle. Okay, so really important that we don't lift the handle into the wheel, that we're just using this forwards hand to get our pressure. All right, that can really, if you're levering there with this pivot and this lever, you're going to put way too much pressure on. So nice and gently, we're going to drop that onto the wheel, and the pressure's coming from these fingers right up close to the wheel. So a couple of swings back and forth, and already we have got to, fresh steel. All right. So that was really a few swipes back and forth, and we got a sharp gouge. What I'm going to do with this one is I want to grade the wheel. So I want to take this up to 1,000 grit. And if we come in, I'll bring it in nice and close. Hopefully, can't quite see the scratch pattern on there, but there are lots of little kind of micro scratches on that. All right, from the front to the back or back to the front. All right. So we're going to grade that wheel up, and we're going to see if we can get a nice polished bevel on this bowl gouge. So I'm using the stone grader. Okay, this is the thing that grades the stone. One side's nice and smooth, and then one side is a little bit rougher. Okay, so you can see that's the rough side, and that's your smooth side. Okay, what happens is this stone, our grindstone, actually cuts this this smooth stone, and it kind of impregnates that the round wheel. Okay, and it kind of sits on the surface and gets in all the little nooks and crannies, and it'll grade that stone up to 1,000 grit. All right, and you want to spend a little bit of time. I'm just going to feel the stone here. Doesn't feel too bad. I'm just going to touch on with that rough one a moment, because I can feel just a little line that I had in that, and hopefully that's going to dress that back. And then we'll use this 1,000 grit side, and I'm applying a fair bit of pressure with that. Okay, you can kind of hear it when it's ready to go. It that raspy sound lessens. The kind of color of the stone changes ever so slightly. But what we're doing is we're grading that 220 grit to up to 1,000. All right. And it does take a couple of minutes. I won't take it all the way, but I'll just touch on there, and I can feel it smoother already. It's nice and smooth. A little bit more, I think. So just back and forth with that one. Again, nice and easy. And I've not changed any of these settings. All right. We're keeping it as it was, and then just going in for a second grind. Well, I don't know if you can hear the difference, but it just sounds that little bit smoother. We're really just dressing the bevel now. It's not taking much steel off at all. Again, using those fingers up nice and close to the wheel to give us our control and our pressure. Good. Okay, so we got a question.
Is there a setting for a 40-40 grind?
A 40-40. So this came up the other day, a 40-40 grind. So when we say a 40-40, so you'll have to beg my my innocence. I'm not actually a wood turner. I do all sorts of other stuff. Sharpening is one of them. A 40-40 grind, Colin. Could you talk me through that?
40-40 grind is these angles same on the front as it is on the sides. I'll be honest, I haven't checked on the Tormek one, so pop that question into Woodworking Wisdom email, and myself and Jason will have a look and find out for you.
Absolutely. So great. That's another little one that's going to, help with our knowledge. We got one here that does have that 40 degrees, but I can't guarantee that that's 40 degrees all the way around that ellipse. Okay. That's something we'll look at, and we'll give you an answer to that one. Thank you.
Another custom event. The difference between the SVD 185 and the 186, is it worth upgrading?
So that's this one. the bowl gouge jig. So on here, we've got the barrel here is ever so slightly shorter. Okay, so let's have a look. I don't think I've got one of the older jigs in here. Just have a quick peek. But basically, the main difference is this barrel's shorter, and what that means is when we are grinding right the way over here, we can come right down to the bar. Okay, whereas on the one of the older jigs, it would foul on one side, so you'd get a bias. You would get it would potentially stop there, and then be allowed to go right the way around on the other side. So what that meant was one of these wings were getting swept all the way back if you didn't have control on that. Okay, so it takes some of that guesswork out. Also, this has the capability of being able to just slide this section back. So you've got a little thumb screw, it just slides in that slot. And that allows the, let me just show you. So let's come overhead on this one, Jason. Lovely. On that one, good. So what I did there was just undid that one and just slide this back. Do it back up again. It's in a little slot here. And that allows us to bring the jig up and to grind a little back bevel. Okay, or grind off the heel, if you will. And there's other things that this jig does as well. We won't get to all of them in this video, but we can do little carbide tips on, so we can take this section out and just use this. It's got a little arbor that goes in there. I think that we'll show you that another time. So yeah, it's a very comprehensive jig, and also some of the carving tools, some of the kind of tricky shapes you get on carving tools are achievable on here. It's going to do your spindle gouges, all kinds of angles and stuff. Have a look in the Tormek book. There's some really great examples of different angles that you can grind. And let me just quickly show you that, because it's a lovely book. I just want to, so if we come over to this camera here, you can see there all the different angles you can get on your bowl gouges. Yeah, so it's a very comprehensive jig. You can see some of the kind of more detailed gouges, and really user friendly, this book. It's got all your kind of jig settings up the side here, your edge angles, and it talks you through it step by step. So a really really good thing, that. Okay, so another question.
Yeah, Martin was just asking, would the stone grader work on the Axminster Craft version?
Absolutely. Yeah, the stone grader's going to work on that. So what you'll find with these stones, so why have a rough side? When we're grinding on here, actually, as well as removing steel, we're kind of blunting the abrasive in the stone itself. Okay, and over time, it's not going to happen quickly. You'll get what they call like a glazing on the stone, where all the sharp grit has either been knocked or, is taken the edge off the sharp grit. What this does is it strips the adhesive out of the stone just on the surface. Okay, so and it will expose all of that fresh grit, making things a bit quicker to grind. But absolutely, it's going to do exactly the same sort of thing. Really useful little tool. I use this a lot. I find these are very underused, but they're great little things, especially if you want to kind of speed up your sharpening, or you want to go for that kind of polished bevel. All right. So we're up to 1000 grit. We've had a little grind on that. What I'm going to do now is to polish the bevel. Okay, front to back on this one. So I'm going to get back my little turning tool setter, and this is going to work on the leather hone as well as on our wheel. So just flipping the universal support, Again, generally I do this freehand. I'll put this on the leather hone freehand, but it's worth showing. Absolutely. So again, we're looking for both of those wheels to turn, using my micro adjuster to bring that in ever so slightly. Now we've gone too much on the bottom. So again, with the micro adjuster, that's where we want to be. So locking off the thumb screws, really important. Okay, so another question while we're honing here.
This is from Daniel. It says, hi, is the Tormek grinding wheel compatible with other wet grinding machines? I have the Shepak and need to replace the wheel.
So the Shepak has like a blue wheel. I would stick brand to brand. Quite often the bore is different in here. So I'm talking about the hole through the middle of the stone. I couldn't comment on the Shepak one. I know it doesn't fit our Axminster one, if that's any use to anyone. But the Shepak one, no, I'm not sure if I'm honest. But like I say, it doesn't fit our Axminster one. The bore that goes through the stone is different, and that really needs to be that needs to sit on this center shaft nicely, because otherwise you'll get an undulation. So if it's off center, it's going to bump, bump, and then you'll have to dress that out. And then perhaps if you undid that and put it back on again, it's going to go straight back to that kind of undulation. All right. Okay.
Another one.
Yeah.
Does the grader work on the Blackstone? So that's right.
I've never used a Blackstone, so that's I think it does. Yeah, I think it should do. There's not much. There's not a massive difference in the composition. It's going to have that kind of porous stone again because it needs to take on the water. And that grader will work with that one too. That one is for kind of so. Tormek do a range of wheels. There's a black one that goes on here. That's for kind of quick stock removal. All right. And top tip with that one: don't lean too hard on it. All right. Allow it to cut. Allow it to do its thing. Don't put too much pressure on. Okay. Which you find a lot of people tend to use just too much pressure. A little bit. Sometimes perhaps a little bit impatient and really leaning on these things. But what that can do is just damage the grit, and you'll get that glazing effect again. Okay. So yeah, it will work. All right. Okay. Yeah. Good stuff.
So will the water trough from the T8 fit my T7 as it looks a little bit bigger?
No, I think it's slightly different actually. On the T8, let's have a little look at this. On the T8, we've got this really natty rise and fall on this one. Okay, let's swing it round so you can have a look. This is the rotating base. Nice and slowly, we're going to swing that around. On here, we've got a little rise and fall. I don't know if you can come to that overhead camera there, Jason. Good. So there's a little thumb screw again, and that allows you to drop or lift the trough on that one. And what that means, there's a couple of little arms in under here. All right. The T7, so this one's predecessor, had a couple of little notches in the body of the machine, front and back, which the trough kind of slotted into. So it was a kind of under and over kind of slot. So no, unfortunately, the T8 trough's not going to fit your T7. All right.
Daniel was asking, does the Axminster wheel fit the Shepak? And I've got an answer from Derek here who says yes, it does, as he has one.
Great.
So answered the question.
Lovely. Thanks, Derek.
We can't confirm that, of course. But Ted's asking, will the bulb grinding jig fit on the Record Power 200mm machine?
Again, some of these machines I'm not very familiar with. It's generally, if they've got this kind of support type bar, then these jigs are compatible. And Tormek are the leaders in the field of this. There's no doubt about it. They've done all the hard work and the the engineering behind this. And then, you know, lots of people have cottoned onto this type of sharpening, and they're reproducing things that are similar, and they're using these Tormek jigs on them. I should think if it's got a support type bar like this, then the likelihood is that it's going to fit straight on there, and it's going to work in exactly the same way. Okay, because it's an imitation of a machine very similar. Okay, good. And like I said in a previous video, if you've got a whetstone grinder, perhaps not Tormek, I would really go for the Tormek jigs. They are head and shoulders above the rest, you know, in build quality, in how long they're going to last you, on just how they work, how smooth they are, all the little brilliant little ideas that are kind of, you know, have made these jigs evolve over the years. You know, again, Tormek aren't one to, you know, say that's good enough. They're constantly improving these jigs. You know, we're going through, and the machine itself. You know, there's been lots of versions of this, and each time they're taking it that one step further, making it that bit more user friendly. Okay, a lovely little machine to use. So we're going to polish the whole of this bevel. Okay, like I said before, I'd normally go freehand with this, but I want to see if we can get that whole bevel polished. I'm just going to rest that down the side of the machine. This is a cutting edge. We'll be very careful of that. And a little bit of our kind of toothpaste amount of our honing paste. And that was just grumbling where I'd rested the handle on the stand there. And same thing, just bring that right the way over. And I'm using a bit of pressure on this hone, more than actually I would on the stone wheel. Really kind of bearing down with those forefingers. Again, not using the handle to lever. And we're getting the build up of all that cutting material. Just going to wipe that back on our leather hone. And just bring it side to side. And we should have a lovely little polish on this. Good. So I'm turning the machine off. Let's get a bit of blue roll or something and just wipe the excess off here. This is perhaps one of the most dangerous operations you'll find on a Tormek, is wiping that material off. That is super sharp now, so be extra careful wiping that kind of gunk off. All right. So let's check out this bevel. Let's see how we're getting on. I'm taking it out the jig now. We've done everything we can. And let's bring it up to our camera there. And we've got a lovely little finish on that. All right, you just see the way the light is shining off that. There's none of those grind marks left. It's just a lovely polished bevel. Okay. And that is super sharp. We'll pop that to one side. One of the guys will blunt that for us, and we'll be back at this another day. So we've got a couple of gouges there. What I was kind of expecting was that to create a little furrow in the stone. It's not actually. It's still nice and straight. Let's see if we can use a different jig. I'm going to go across to a round nose scraper now. Okay. And in the book, it has it up in this horizontal position, okay, for a scraper. I like it down here. Again, this is a personal preference. You know, find your own way of using these machines. You know, as well as all the jigs and stuff. You know, you can do a lot of freehand sharpening on these. So I'm anticipating coming a bit closer, so I'm just bringing that micro adjuster back, and I'm going to put on our little table. My round nose scraper is here. And again, we're going to go with that marker method. Have a look at this table. There's actually, I want to show you this because it's quite cool. Let's come across onto this camera here. This is what they call a T-lock system, and they've patented this. All right, so they've got a round hole with two flats on it. And what happens is when you screw that in, it pushes the support bar up and down and kind of wedges it. So again, little minor. If you're looking at other jigs, that'll be a straight hole. Because it's easier to machine, it's cheaper. That's where the extra cost is coming into all of these little innovations. I'm gonna again just eyeball that bevel and just bring it flush and flat with the stone. Just by eye. We're going to use a bit of marker pen. Again, just color this bevel. This is one of our Axminster craft ones with the black steel. Okay. Oh, there goes my pen. I'm gonna pop that there. So same thing. We're putting our round nose scraper up against the stone there, and I can see it's left a little mark on the stone, but I don't know if you're getting that. We've only got a little scratch in the middle of the scraper, which suggests to me that that's not flat all the way around. Okay, that's had a little hand grind. So let's go for the middle. All right, let's take it back to one flat bevel. So I'm kind of happy there. I saw by eye that the bevel was in contact with the stone. There wasn't much light shining through. And this one is a kind of pivot around on this table. Okay, so we're just bringing that in and just swinging the handle around side to side. Makes a bit of a noise, this one, and we're still on our 1000 grit from our bowl gouge. So I'm just going to bring that back, just rough up the stone. And actually, you can hear the difference between the 1000 and what we're using now, the 220. And just swing that handle back and forth. I can still see the pen coming off. So I think we're coming back to our original grind. There we go. So up against this one here, you can see we've taken all that steel off. Perhaps a little bit, come around a little bit further on the wings. All right, but we've got that continuous grind and we've matched the pre-existing angle. Going to bring my table just that little bit closer because I feel when I go round on the wings, I'm getting a little bit of a, it feels like it's going to slip off the table. So let's just stay safe, make that adjustment. We don't need to adjust the angle here, just how close it is to the stone. And that's giving me a lot more support now. It feels a lot more comfortable. And again, we're not driving this into the stone. Allow the machine to do the work. We're not using pressure to kind of achieve our grind. Good. Okay. So that's our round nose scraper. Again, if you wanted to bring that around a little bit further, you can. Now, just one other, well, a couple of other jigs I want to quickly show you. I'll probably rattle through them a little bit, but let's go with dressing the stone now, because this is important. It's important for a few little jobs that you're going to do. So we're going to look at flattening and truing the stone, and I think that will probably be about it for how we're going for time. But we've got another question here, Colin.
Yep, so this is just related to what you were doing there. Is there a shorter table available for when the tool becomes too short?
There isn't. There is, if you've already got a scissor jig, that has a very narrow table with like a PTFE top on it. So I guess you could use that. And, you know, if you're feeling very flush, this is aluminium. So you can cut this if you're, you know, it depends on the price of a table to whatever gouge you're using. But, you know, this is aluminium. You could potentially cut this. But if you've already got the scissor jig, I'd use that little table because it's not as wide across the width. So this is our stone truing jig. This is a TT50. Okay. Now we've got a couple of little prongs here, almost like a fork. A couple of little prongs. Really important that they sit either side of the support bar. So I'm going to slide that through there. If we look down through the jig, the bit that actually does the cutting, this little diamond tooth, they've redesigned that, and it has this kind of cut. So that also sits on the bar now. Going through our little holes there, and again, whoop, really important that those two forks kind of straddle that threaded bar there. We're going to put some sideways pressure on, and I'm going to do up that thumb screw, and I'm going to give it an extra little bit. It's really important that that one's tight. We don't want this letting go and dipping into our stone, okay? Because, you know, potentially you could take off a couple of years use. We're skimming this stone. We're not, you know, we haven't got a massive furrow in the middle. But do this a little bit at a time. We don't want to, you know, try and take that off all in one hit. So what I'm doing, I'm just adjusting our, these are loose, our thumb screws here, so the support bar can come up and down. And I'm just using our micro adjuster to bring that little tooth kind of on the edge of the stone here. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is just bring it down that little bit more until I can still see just a little spot of light. I'm going to turn the machine on, make sure our universal support's in position, and I'm going to quickly whiz across the stone. If we've got any high spots, then it will tell me. You'll hear the little diamond tooth engage and cut onto that one. So one number on our micro adjuster, and I'm letting off these little thumb screws. We'll push, push that one down and see if we're going to make a connection. And I can just hear it. And I'm going to carry on with that. I know it's only just touching on the stone, but let's go right the way across. What's happening here is as I turn this, a little carriage in the middle is on a thread, and that's traveling as we turn these thumb screws. Okay. Now, because that's such a small cut, I'm confident I can just come straight off the edge. Okay. If we were taking a bigger cut, you might want to stop just before you reach the edge, lift the bar, and bring that little carriageway right the way across this way, and then come at it going the other direction. That way you've got the material behind the stone. You're not going to kind of break out the edge. Okay. Another little tip. Again, this is something we saw on one of Nick's videos, Nick Agar, is just to gently put a little radius on the edge of the stone using that stone grader, using the rough side of the stone grader. It doesn't take much, but just to soften that sharp edge is gonna help in this process as well. Did I adjust that? Don't think I did, so I'm going to go one, perhaps a little less, and then again pushing down on our bar, and now I'm going to travel across this way. There we go. And take it nice and slow. Don't race across. I'm going to take it nice and slow. And this will show off any high spots. If you've got a low spot, like we were saying, that little valley or furrow in the middle, you'll see that that stays kind of dirty. You can see now we've got that kind of half of the fresh stone exposed. We're just going to carry on and work our way across the stone. And this is the fastest cutting that the stone will be. When it has this little texture on it from the truing tool, from that little diamond tip cutting the stone, although it's still a 220 grit stone, it will now have that kind of texture of the cutter on there. So say you had something that had a big chip, or you've dropped your skew and the end's just kind of peeking over one way. This is the kind of, that's going to be really good for your reshaping, for taking material off of that a little bit quicker, because it's got that texture on it. Still the same grit, but actually, if you looked at it really close under a microscope or something, you'd see that scratch line that's been produced with this. Say you didn't want that, you just wanted to take that furrow out and then get back to using it, just use your grading stone, okay? And that will kind of calm it down. It will lay those little lines back down. Okay, so another question.
So this one's from Ted. He's just asking, so a question for Colin, is it worth going to a honed edge on a turning gouge? Yes, is the answer. What you'll find is that the honed edge will last a lot longer, so it means less trips to sharpen the chisel. I even do that on the skew chisels, especially now, but certainly bowl gouges, yes, definitely.
Good stuff. So thanks, Colin. Really lucky to have all this kind of knowledge on tap here. Certainly over the years, I've benefited from having these guys. Any questions you've got like that, even if it's not within my kind of knowledge base, we can bounce those over to the guys. We can give you emails back, because, none of us have an all-encompassing knowledge of this, massive world of woodwork. Certainly we're here to help, and if you've got any questions like that, just pop them to us on our woodworking wisdom at axminstertools.com. We can answer those sorts of questions. So that stone is now dressed. That is the plan was to go on with the skew, but I think we're running out of time here today. If you wanted to see how the skew is sharpened, like I said before, we looked at the T4 last week. So just pop back onto that video. You'll see the setup and use of that multi-jig with the closed shoe in it. Okay. So thanks for spending your time with us this afternoon. Like I say, a lovely machine. I would, this is what gave me my my grounding in sharpening, and it made all of this stuff accessible to me. Okay, like I said before, it can be quite daunting trying to hand sharpen some of the more complex curves you get on things like bowl gouges and things like that. But it just takes all of that guesswork out for me. And it allowed me just to step into the world of sharpening and a knock-on effect of turning, and having sharp tools and the benefits that brings to your turning. That these T8s, the Tormek slow whetstone grinders, is what gave me my path into sharp tools. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Come back tomorrow. We've got Jason looking at files and rasps and the Japanese carving file. So some nice little hints and tips he's going to give you with all of that kind of stuff. But again, thanks a lot. We'll see you soon.